Hey guys, it's me, EODGamer here, and in this video, I want to talk to you about who is the better investment value of these two amazing fire characters, relatively supportive as well, Lingsha, as well as Topaz and Numby. Let's first things first start off with current value. We'll be super unbiased, just compare logically between all of them in these categories. If you want my personal bias thoughts, I promise I only will mention it right at the end for any of you who care for any of them about that. For current value, we want to look in this section because when you are spending your precious resources, you want to know who benefits your account a little bit more right now. If they benefit your account more in future, they get better over time and stuff, you might as well just put them on a rerun, right? So that's what this category really aims to fulfill. The first thing that I want to talk about is all of the team types that these two can categorize in. I have a nice graphic illustrating over here showing you which character plays into where. So Lingsha over here plays mainly into follow-up, debuff, fast and often. These are critical ones. And Topaz and Numby share a very similar trend. So both of them actually fill very similar teams. The only other teams that Lingsha really plays into that Topaz and Numby doesn't really want to play into is probably break teams, as well as a little bit of DOT teams for Lingsha because there's not much alternatives currently in the sustain role for DOT. So if you're looking for a character that can be playing to multiple teams, Lingsha does offer you a little bit of more value for team type fulfillment in terms of hitting all the categories. But this is generally a trend across most sustained characters. It's not just unique to Lingsha. Just want to highlight that before any of you get misled. But this is very important though, because especially if you're looking to build certain teams, this helps you decide whether the character might be a little bit more value for you or not too much value, because maybe you're not even wanting to build these teams that I mentioned over here as well. Maybe you're focusing on HP decay or skill point teams, that in that case, none of them matter as much. So coming back to here, the current value decision between a sustained character as well as a supportive / damage dealer like Topaz and Numby really comes to the point is, are you a new player or are you an experienced player? Most new players into the game will not have many sustained characters, and you do not have what everyone is saying on the internet, which is oh, E6 Gallagher is fine enough to use and stuff like that. If you're a new player, E6 of a 4-star character likely would take some time to get, and in this case, sustained characters always give you a lot more value, because if you can't even heal and support your team when you are very fresh in the game, you won't be able to even dish out your damage. So there's no point building your harmonies and stuff if your healers can't even sustain your team to even survive the round. You get one-shotted and whatever not and stuff like that. Other than that, if you are a more experienced player looking to round up your teams, I think Topaz and Numby offers great value also for experienced players who are trying to complete follow-up team compositions, trying to bring out the best of their teams. Because for some experienced players, maybe you have a lot of other alternatives, which we'll talk about in a bit for Lingsha already. Topaz and Numby does offer something unique, which is she is both a damage dealer and a support, and especially with a little bit higher investment, she becomes really excellent at that role of being both a damage dealer and support, especially for follow-up teams with nowadays with Fei Xiao and Robin as well, for any of you who have them really strong for experienced players who want to round up their teams. In other sense, not talking about the time of how long you've been playing the game or what the team compositions, who they fulfill, one important thing to know is Lingsha offers a pretty decent amount of AoE fire damage. For those of you who do not have fire in your team, maybe you are not running Firefly based teams with Lingsha, you're slapping her in any team. Those who play, for example, Aventurine and Fu Xuan, or even characters like Lota, know that these offensive units sometimes offer you a little bit of break on the enemy. Lingsha gives you a lot of fire application, and fire does a lot of damage as well if you manage to break the enemy. With a character that scales with break effect, Lingsha will offer you probably the ability to one-shot some squishies if you can burst them down and get rid of their entire break, given her high break effect scaling too. So I think that's something interesting that is worth talking about. Topaz and Numby, on the other hand, if you're playing her as solo fire, she might take a while to hit all 5 enemies to get all the weakness break broken if they're all weak to fire and stuff like that. So that is a critical difference if you're looking to cover the fire angle of things. Currently, I think that Topaz most popular teams right now in the value, and you will get most value out of her for a team of Fei Xiao or Dr. Ratio as your core damage dealer. For Lingsha, on the other hand, she plays into a lot more teams, so there's no critical character that you need to get. So that is a very big important decision factor when you are thinking whether you want to pull for Topaz and Numby. Do you have the current meta that is the best in slot follow-up attacking? That's one thing that will be on my mind. So in terms of current value, I think for the situations that are better, I will put Lingsha slightly ahead than Topaz and Numby for this category of giving current value to most people in the game. Especially for newer players, I think she offers super ton of value, because it does take a while for Topaz and Numby to ramp up, especially you need multiple characters or even maybe multiple investments in eidolons and signatures and whatever not. Now this is the fun one, right? This category here, alternatives, let's talk about it. For alternatives, the real big thing, you will see everyone mention all over the internet. The biggest thing about Lingsha is Gallagher. Now, we're not going to debate who is better, what is better and not. I think that Lingsha is really excellent, giving a lot of AoE cleanse, giving a lot of AoE sustain and a lot of fire application as well. And also 5-star stats. Gallagher is of course great, and always, technically, if you have a 4-star alternative, regardless of whether they are inferior or not, 4-star alternatives does make a case for maybe the 5-star might not be as valuable. But Lingsha is not just a 5-star Gallagher, she also offers you a lot more things which we'll talk about in the next few sections. But newer players generally don't have access to a E6 4-star characters, and it takes a lot of time. It's sometimes easier to go for a E0, 1 copy of a signature of a limited character, compared to 7 copies of a 4-star character that might be rated up or not rated on a banner. You will need a lot of pulls to get it. The main competition other than Gallagher is other defensive unit. In particular, we have Aventurine, which plays into a lot of the teams that Lingsha already plays into. So characters like Aventurine, characters like Fushen, characters like Ho, these 3 and Luota as well, all the limited 5-star sustains play into similar categories as Lingsha. So these are all very, very heavy competition for her as well. As of course, especially with Gallagher being probably one of the top picks because of the cost efficiency. Especially if you're a more experienced player later in the game, you likely will have E6 Gallagher. So that is the first side for like Lingsha. The alternatives for Topaz and Numby on the other hand. Topaz and Numby had very few alternatives coming in to her like first banners and second banners. But nowadays, with the new team compositions, you have the like of like March 7, you have the likes of Mozer as well. Where's my Mozer? Okay, let's just put a proxy here. This mouse will be by proxy for Mozer. But let's just say this was Mozer. You have 2 other alternatives, March 7 Han, Mozer for Topaz and Numby. That's already really strong alternatives. 4-star alternatives, one is like totally for free, one you of course need to like gacha a bit to get it. So that is like something critical to note. Topaz and Numby nowadays is not as essential as she was before, where no one else offered like a similar supportive ability than her right now. And likely, maybe in future, we might have more, but who knows. Between the 2 of them, for alternatives category, I think I'll give it to Topaz and Numby. Topaz and Numby definitely still offers a lot more unique kit of supporting a DPS, yet still doing damage. You can get by with like a lot of alternatives for Lingsha, in 4-star equivalents, in other 5-star limited sustains. Their main job is really to sustain your team. So as long as you get that checked, they are doing their job. So you can find it in a lot of places. So that goes for Topaz and Numby. And then the next section I want to talk about, now that we've talked about current value, alternatives in the current game state, naturally we'll turn our attention to the future. And this is an important section because if we are spending money on our character, we want to know, do they get better with time, or will we just like be stuck and like not improve at all? One of the critical things that I want to mention was Topaz and Numby in this exact same video format when she first came out. One of the things that we mentioned is she will get stronger over time, especially in the near to medium term, which it did pan out. So this is an important section to take note of as well. For any of you pullers on day 1, you want to know whether Lingsha gets better, this is the one for you. For future value, generally speaking, across the board, it generally talks about power creep. Damage dealing units overall are more prone to power creep. Both of them offer some sort of damaging in their kit, but I would say that Topaz fits the category of a damage dealer a little bit more, whereas Lingsha is just sustain utility with a little bit of damage as a plus on the side. You won't be pulling Lingsha for damage specifically in mind, but Topaz and Numby, you expect her to do damage. Because of this situation, naturally, Topaz and Numby will be subjected to a little bit more power creep than not because of her damage dealing ability. Or when the day comes where a sub DPS in a similar fashion deals way more damage than Topaz and Numby, even outstripping the amount of damage buff she gives to an entire team, that is when we could see that things might change for Topaz and Numby quite easily. And that is like just the fallacy, the downfalls of a damage dealing character. Generally, are more susceptible to power creep. Sustain, on the other hand, takes a much longer time to power creep and holds value a lot better. Even one of the old Giga Chats of version 1.1, Luota, is still relevant today. He is not unusable. He's still finding a lot of value in a lot of people. And this was like way back in, I don't know, May 2023. So you have almost 1.5 years and yet you are still finding good value. And for those of you who are new players into the game and you're pulling a limited character, you will likely find similar value for a character like Lingsha that will stretch on for a long period of time. The one catch, I would say, like this is like a side catch, right? Most people that have 2 limited sustains in either in the preservation slot or abundance slot will find it a bit harder to pull for newer sustains because you're already like, I already have 2, I don't need an extra one unless they offer you something significantly more of value. So that's one thing that I want to just share, the mindset change when you already have sustains. They work a little bit different from DPS characters. DPS characters, you're like pull kind of thing. But other than that, I can see in this category, Topaz dropping in a little bit of value, especially without her Eidolons or her signature with like currently new alternatives into the game, on top of like be more in future, more power creep stuff. So unless you have her super well invested E1, S1, etc., I do think Topaz and Numby suffers a bit more in this category. So I'll have to give it to Lingsha in terms of the power creep, future value kind of aspect. I do see a more clearer path of runway for Lingsha than Topaz and Numby, especially since a lot of the thoughts that we have talked about for Topaz and Numby way back when she was first released have already materialized and she has gotten a lot of favor too. And I'll close the recommendation for long-term value for Topaz and Numby in that sense. The next thing that I want to talk about is potential. Now, we've been talking a lot more about game state, meta, team compositions, and high-level stuff, but in potential, what we want to do is turn our attention to Hoyoverse as a company instead. This category looks at Hoyoverse and sees their trends that they do in the past 4 years plus that we have been playing their games to share with you what the developers' tendencies are. First of all, I just want to say, this character here on the right, Topaz and Numby, has been getting every single buff possible since like she was first released. Every patch, you either have a buff to follow her attacking, you have a buff for more teammates that come out, or some sort of like Fuwa com and stuff like that. She has been getting better over time, and she's probably one of the characters that has seen improvements since she was first released into the game. And now it's like from not really super meta when Jingliu was together with her, everyone was pulling like Jingliu back then. But nowadays, Topaz really popped off. She's like one of the top like characters in the game right now in terms of like supportive. Everyone really loves this character, super strong as well. So you can have a bit of favoritism, especially if Hoyoverse wants to push it in that angle, wants to like give it in favor. And now with like the new summon set also, right? So everything benefits her overall. It's just interesting, I find. So developer tendencies does matter. So one thing that you want to know is also, third banner is Topaz's third banner, and the fourth banner is going to be likely very far away. Given how Hoyoverse does it, no one has came back for their fourth time yet. Topaz and Numby, in fact, is the second character other than like Kafka, who's the first to come back for her third time. If you guys are thinking, oh, I really like this character, I'll pull her in future, that future might be really, really long. So this is a great chance for you to consider picking her up. Of course, we have never seen a fourth banner, so I can't recommend you whether it's going to be like 6 months time, 1 year time. It might be longer than expected as well, since no one else has it before. So that is one thing critical to know. If you like the character, you might want to pull it because it's the third banner already. That being said, on the flip side, most sustained characters, most characters in Honkai Star Rail generally rerun in about half a year, like rule of thumb. But sustained characters are slightly longer on average. The sustained characters on average rerun like somewhere between 7 months on average. And 7 months is approximately about April 2025 timeline for any of you who are expecting it. Based on the past trend, if we estimate 2025 April is when you will see her again. If you can wait there, that's another factor to consider, whether you want to like pull her up right now, because if you think that she's a lot better for future trends, you can wait for a lot of the future trends to materialize before considering any of these characters upside and downside as well. So that is for the pull banner kind of cycle. The next decision I would think is the biggest upside to both of these characters is really Hoyoverse's decision to implement summon-related buffs. If we are going to have a new category in these 8 teams, which is the summon meta, currently there are only 3 characters that play into the summon meta, which is Topaz and Numby, Lingsha, as well as Jingyuan. 3 characters, and maybe they are just implementing this the Madan amusement park set for for 3 characters, but I don't think so. It might be a beckoning of something more to come. In that case, Lingsha probably offers you a very versatile angle if you are trying to find an anchor in summon teams. Sustain, Summoner, no one else has that. Damage summoner, probably they will sell it to you in future. You're a spanking hot damage dealer, male or female, or whatever not. These kind of characters, a lot easier to sell, but sustain is going to be an anchor. Between both of them, if you believe that summon is going to be meta, Lingsha should be top of your mind. This is something that Gala cannot fight. He doesn't have summons at all, and no other sustain has that. So she will be very unique in that aspect. Only if you are willing to bet in the potential section that they are planning to go into summon. I think that that's a huge factor. So granted, if you're talking about trends, Topaz and Numby probably will be high priority because she's going to be a lot rarer to come by. 4th banner will be very far away. But if you're talking about taking a bet on sudden meta, Lingsha is going to come way ahead. So I'll leave that decision to you in this very, very potential section that might materialize or might not. And that's why it's depending on Hoyover's decision making. Last but not least, before I share with you my personal bias, free-to-play kit. Topaz and Numby E1 S1 to fully poop off. In order for Topaz and Numby to fully pop off, what am I thinking nowadays? Topaz and Numby E1 S1 to fully pop off, whereas Lingsha is perfectly fine as E0 S0. Reading off a sentence over there that I have, and it really shares my feelings as well. In order for you to see the best value of Topaz and Numby, you do want E1 S1 for her to really gain a lot of damage and a lot of crit buffing for your teammates to like deal damage to units. On the other hand, Lingsha is very, very good options at E0 S0, very easy to build. So many free-to-play like cones, free-to-play gear, even like stat requirements for relics is also very easy to fulfill for Lingsha. We will be talking about it on the build guide channels that will be out on our channel as well for Lingsha. You can check it out if you're interested. It's super easy to build, nothing difficult, not really very, very tricky. In fact, it's like super brain dead once you know the secret strategy of how to build her. Other than that, Topaz and Numby, on the other hand, is really more of also of a damage dealer, and she does want a lot more gear for like crit and stuff like that, because you need to do damage with this particular character and not just like sit there and heal your teammates or something. But of course, Lingsha does a lot of damage. So in this category, I probably would say Lingsha offers a lot more free-to-play kit, given that she is fine at E0 S0. I don't see a need for anyone to push beyond that. Whereas Topaz and Numby does want to push beyond. People with E0 S0 will start to feel that she's a little bit maybe more in a more competitive space, especially with Mozart and March 7 nowadays. Some might even considering putting one other character when you need an imaginary damage dealer instead. But E1 and S1 is really when you will need to cement her success, and that's very different, right? You almost need like 3 characters, and 3 characters versus 1 is an unfair comparison. That's what free-to-play kit is talking about. They must be compared apple to apple. And last but not least, of course, is my own personal thoughts. And if you guys are finding value in this video so far, do give me a like, comment, and subscribe for more of such future content. I try to do this for any close comparisons that we have on where we are making a decision-making process in Honkai Star Rail. Between the two of them, my gut feel is summons will come more and more into the game, and both of them play into summon meta. So if you are looking for a summon-related upside, both of them have it, but because of that anchor position for Lingsha, and I am willing to take a bet that Hoyoverse needs to change the direction of the game away from the current meta of like follow-up teams, debuff teams, which is like Akirion teams, your facial teams, your Robin teams and whatever not, or even like break teams like Firefly, which is the current game state. They need to do something more to keep up their revenue and keep selling rather than like just increasing numbers, making it harder. Summon is a great way to do it. They have shown that they are implementing a little bit, and this is the gateway medicine for you to access the entire summon thing, because she anchors you in that sense in a summon category. For that reason and that reason alone, I would likely put Lingsha ahead for my personal bias, but overall, I think Lingsha will offer you great value. Like, there's never a bad decision pulling a limited sustain. The question is, do you have too much sustain? Too much healing isn't a good thing. And at this point, I would like to invite you to check out these 2 other videos, especially maybe the 8 teams if you're interested in more theory of why the 8 teams, why they're 8, why they're not at 20 or something like that. And again, guys, thank you again so much for your attention. See you in the next video.